the better watchers, their livelihood more honestly linked to their ability to observe and manipulate. Spies are the second oldest and the second best. At least, that was how he felt. He had decided to allow the priest enough time for one drink. The woman in the doorway waved at him, and he turned away to light a cigarette. He felt weighed down by grief, by the gentle rain that had soaked into his clothes, by simple tiredness. His dark beard was long and unkempt, and the stress of the previous months had left him looking older than his 35 years. Somehow he brought his mind back to the task ahead, to tell the priest who he was and what he wanted, to deal with his confusion and anger, to identify what might motivate him to help. Jonas had never done anything like this before. As an analyst, it was his job to come to terms with the rogues gallery of assumptions, vendettas, half-truths, and bold lies that constituted the majority of the intelligence that crossed his desk and make it useful, to elevate it to something approaching fact. But he had never been operational, and his temperament had kept him away from much of what went on around him. He remembered an agent handler talking about the ways of keeping the door open to a second meeting, even if the initial pitch went disastrously. This struck him as fantastical. His plan would either work tonight, or it would go wrong. There would be no second chances. The interior was smaller and darker than he had expected. A poorly stocked bar stretched along the right side. A few tables were pushed up against the opposite wall. The woman who had waved at him took his arm and led him to the bar. She pushed her breast against him. "You going to buy me a drink?" She had begun her pitch without hesitation. As an aspiring practitioner, Jonas admired her directness. He saw the priest sitting alone further down the bar. He looked sad. Somehow his soft, grey, hunched shape a thickening of the gloom. At the end of the room, two women danced with a fat man. The women, swaying on their high heels, knew not to risk too much movement. It looked as though they were slowly trying to escape from a set of elaborate foot restraints. "You want to go to room?" He put a $20 bill on the bar, took his drink, and walked down to join the priest. "Father Tobias, this is a surprise. Do you mind if I join you?" He heard the wobble in his voice and regretted that he had turned out this way. Tobias turned to see who was speaking to him. The tape holding his glasses together at the bridge glittered weakly. He didn't smile when he saw it was Jonas. "No one here calls me father," he said. Being a priest must be one of those things it's difficult to put to one side for an evening. Unsure what to do, Jonas took the stool next to him. "It's part of you. Like an accent, like a preference for tea rather than coffee, like a criminal record." His speech was clear, and his hand, as he reached for the glass, was steady. Even when drunk, Jonas had learned, Tobias spoke in the measured, unemotional rhythms of a theologian. The only change was that he slowed down to avoid slurring his words, which had the effect of making his Swiss accent more pronounced. They had first met 10 days earlier. Jonas had been trying to follow him for 3 straight evenings, and when Tobias had taken something from his pocket and dropped a folded envelope, Jonas decided to act. He had concluded that on balance there were more downsides than upsides to following a drunkard. They might not be alert, but they walked slowly, doubled back on themselves, attracted attention. The unpredictable tradecraft of the alcoholic, as challenging in its own way as that of any Russian spy. Jonas had picked up the envelope, read the contents, and caught up with him to hand it back. They had gone for a drink at a nearby bar, where Jonas explained that he was a freelance journalist researching an article on Christian communities in Syria. If the priest had been struck by the coincidence, he hadn't shown it. They had met several times over the following week. On the last occasion, Tobias had been drunk enough for Jonas to have no difficulty stealing his hotel room key. He hadn't planned to do it, and he certainly had no experience of such things. Risk made him uncomfortable, whether it came in the form of a conversation with a pretty girl or a deviation from the precise route he walked to work.